Hi, I'm Matt. Welcome to this mini-series where I want to help you get the most out of your guitar amplifier. I'm going to lead you through 6 sessions that will help improve your skill in dialing in a good sound out of the amplifier that you have. And if you're not entirely sure what a good sound is, hopefully by the end of these 6 sessions, you will have learned enough about your amplifier that you can find something that suits your ear. So in these 6 sessions, we're going to be looking at our amplifier in a pretty general sense. In this first session, we're going to be understanding the amplifier types that are available on the market today and figuring out just what type of amplifier that you do in fact own. Part 2, we're going to begin to look at the controls that you might find on the front of your amplifier. Parts 3 and 4, we're going to be looking specifically at equalization or EQ. Part 5, we're going to be specifically looking at effects, things like reverb and chorus and flanger. And then part 6, we're going to be putting all of these things together. We're going to actually, we're going to have an amp in front of us. We're going to dial in a couple of different sounds, what a good rock tone might sound like, a good blues tone might sound like, maybe a metal tone, what that might sound like. And then we're going to be just generally talking about how to go about dialing in all these settings from scratch. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to talk about the 3 kinds of amplifiers that you're going to find on the market today and determine just what kind of amplifier that you are playing through. The first type of amplifier is called a tube or a valve amplifier. The second is called a solid state or a digital amp. And the third is called a valve state or hybrid amplifier. Tube amplifiers will utilize what we call tubes. It's going to be a combination of power tubes and preamp tubes. Preamp tubes are going to be small like this, while power tubes are going to be about that size. Digital or solid state amplifiers are going to utilize what's called digital modeling. It's going to use digital algorithms, if you will, to try to recreate the sound that a tube produces. It uses transistors instead of tubes for its power section to make your guitar sound louder. It's going to be generally cheaper, it's going to be more lightweight, but it's not going to quite be the tone quality that comes from a tube amplifier. To determine whether or not you have a tube amplifier or a solid state amplifier, just simply look at the components in the back of your amplifier, and if you don't see anything that looks like this, it is safe to assume that your amplifier is probably digital or solid state. But there is an in-between amplifier, which is called valve state or hybrid, is going to be just that. It's going to be a hybrid between a tube amplifier and a solid state amplifier. It's going to utilize the preamp tubes of a tube amplifier while utilizing also the transistors from a digital or solid state amplifier, and you're not going to see the power tubes. If you're still not certain what kind of amplifier you have, it's best to try to get a hold of your owner's manual or just do a quick Google search on your amplifier and see what kind of amp that you are actually running. So maybe a question's popped into your head at this point. Why are we taking the time to discuss what kinds of amplifiers there are, and why are we discussing and trying to figure out what amp that I own? Quite simply, if you own a tube amplifier or a valve state amplifier, you have something in your amplifier that is perishable. The tubes get used, they wear out, and over long periods of time, those tubes will not sound as good as they could. So part of owning a tube amplifier is maintenance. You need to replace your tubes every few years, especially if you're playing constantly, because they will wear out and they just don't sound as good. So if you're not interested in owning a tube amplifier because of the cost of maintaining it with the tubes and stuff, it can get a little bit complex. Tube amps are much more higher power. They're more dangerous to work with. Tube amps do require a speaker load to be connected to them at all times when they're on. You might want to look into a valve state amplifier if you are wanting to avoid all of those things, but you are still wanting that authentic tube tone. Now you can get a really good sound out of a solid state amp, don't get me wrong. If a manufacturer makes an amp and it sounds good, by all means, if that suits you, go for it, whether it's solid state or tube. I've heard some really, really good sounding digital amps, and I've also heard some absolutely horrific sounding ones. I've heard phenomenal sounding tube amps, and I've also heard really, really horrific sounding tube amps. So before you purchase an amplifier in the future, make sure you spend some time, play through the amps that you are buying before you buy them. Make sure that if you have another chance to purchase an amplifier, make sure that amplifier is going to suit you before you walk out of the shop with it. Now we're going to move on to session 2, where we are going to take a closer look at the front panel of the amplifier.